Yep, there you guys are. I see people piling on. Just give me a moment to make sure I've got everything connected here and looking good. I believe we do. Just give me a moment. Oh, see, I got to cut that out. Now that's gone. I got this. All right. So as people are coming on, and man, we've got the numbers are adding up very, very quickly. I'll introduce myself and this young man in just a few moments, but as you are joining us, whether you're on your phone or you're on your computer, you do have a few controls. You can control the view, whether you see the person that's speaking only, whether you see Dr. Tony and myself. So just know that that is there. There is also, we do have enabled chat. We're expecting thousands and thousands of parents and mothers and care providers from all over the world. So we've got a team of a few people that are going to do the best they can. But what we will do is we will save the chat and answer every question that we possibly cannot get to tonight. And that's a big request, I understand, because you, I'm sure, have a lot of questions. But we will do the best we possibly can to answer the questions that we get live. And if we don't answer them, we're going to put them on a Facebook page. And I'll give you the information for that in just a few moments. Excuse me. So as we look and make sure that we're recording, we're live. Dr. Tony, you can hear me?
Yeah, man. Look at all the people on this. It's crazy. Awesome.
And I can hear you. I'm going to go ahead and open up chat. If you can hear me, I don't need all of you because there's a lot of you, but if you can click the chat button and just say hello or maybe where you're from, I can hear you. Thank you, Jess. I appreciate that. Let us know where you're calling in from North Carolina. Another one from North Carolina. Wow, Indianapolis. Oh, and there they go. Can't even see how they're going so fast. Milwaukee, Pennsylvania, Nashville, Montana, Myrtle Beach. Oh, whoa.
Wow.
I don't think there's a slow down button, but again, we're going to read all this. Texas, all right. I hope you are high and dry right now. Florida, same to you. So we have a lot of hungry people on this line tonight, and most of them are parents. And the reason you're here is the reason we're here, because we're all looking for solutions. And I want to welcome you and thank you for your commitment, for sticking with us for no longer than an hour. It depends on how deep we go. But we are going to do everything we can to get right at it and give you some answers that we're both very confident you haven't heard before. And our purpose and our entire being here tonight is to help you gain more clarity to issues that can range from, it's just kind of annoying, my daughter, my son is a little hyper, to it's tearing at the fabric of your family. And we understand that. I've got 3 kids. Dr. Tony's got 4 kids. Together, we've been in practice for, over 40 years. And most of that's on my side, by the way. And so we understand whatever we can understand, and we're committed to helping you. And we're excited to do that. So we are going to dive in and get at it. So first, again, welcome to all of you that have just logged in. My name is Dr. David Jackson. I am a chiropractor, and I've been a chiropractor for 30 years now. I'm also the founder and president of the National Wellness Foundation, which is a nonprofit organization which is sponsoring tonight's event. So you'll hear a little bit from me, but mainly I am here to honor, recognize, and ask a few questions of our special guest. And that is the good-looking dude with the, I don't know what happened. Do I need Dr. Christina, your wife? Or
it was a little rough getting through the parking lot in here. Yes, the classic walked into a door, put my babies to bed. So
nice. All right. Well, the one and only Dr. Tony Ebel. So I'm coming at you from San Diego. Dr. Tony is coming at you from Crystal Lake, Illinois. And again, we've got people coming at us from all over the place. And again, as you ask questions, the intention is we're going to answer them right now, live with you. And we are live with you. And hopefully technology holds out for us. So far, so good. So we are both very, very excited to bring this opportunity for you. What we're here to talk to you is something that Dr. Tony, I believe, outside of a Hollywood movie about something that unfortunately Texas and Florida have experienced in a meteorological sense, you coined the term the perfect storm in a healthcare sense, based upon something that I wish was more common, to be honest with you. And I'll get to what I mean by that in a moment, but you did something that every mom, for sure, every dad as a father would absolutely expect, but we just don't get as often as we should. And that was, you listened. You continue to listen. And I think when I see what you've done, you've listened not just to the words, not just the stories of thousands of parents with kids that are somewhere on the spectrum from, again, just being, maybe they might need an appointment because they're acting up in school, or they're full-blown autistic, right? Anywhere on that spectrum. And what a particularly great time to talk about this, considering it's the first or second week of school. But you did something and continue to do something that, again, is somewhat unusual, but expected by someone like myself as a dad or a mom. And that is, you listened. And then you started to recognize patterns, and you came up with this idea of the perfect storm. So what I would love for you to do with our audience is to share kind of a little bit of background about who you are, where you are, and how you got to this place about the perfect storm, so that you put a foundation under it. And then let's dig right into the thing that I know you love to do right away. Like, I can just go, okay, Tony, welcome, go, science. Yes. Talk about science. But first, a little background. So can you do that for us?
Yeah, totally. Yes. So I can't start with the science right away. Okay. Yeah.
Just a minute.
No, it's crazy. Thank you for having me with the National Wellness Foundation, all that we get to do with this crew. And thank you, parents, for tuning in tonight. Like Dr. David said, I promise you're going to get some answers that you've been searching, Googling, and Facebooking for. So for me, I am going on, I'll be finishing my 10th year of practice as a chiropractor, and now specifically a pediatric and family chiropractor with this perfect storm specialty. But no, that's not how it began for me. I chose chiropractic because of that. My love was science. I found a chiropractor who loved what they were doing. It was a fun, engaging, healing environment. And when I found out how much science and what the science was really like behind it, fell in love with it all the way back in high school and never looked back. But I was going to be, regular chiropractor, for, I guess, lack of a better term on it. And then 2 weeks before I graduated from chiropractic school in 2007, my beautiful baby and oldest and bossiest daughter, Addison, was born, right? 3 daughters, you know what I'm talking about there, Dr. David.
Yes.
And so changes my perspective, right? And it changes my perception of the world and what mattered. So long story short, because we got a lot to get through tonight, I was then opening my practice in 2007 and 2008, and it'll sound crazy to say these words tonight in 2017, but at that time, this autism, ADHD, the autism age was really coming of age, I guess is maybe a way to say it. And ADHD was, for sure, in a much bigger way. And sensory wasn't even, like, sensory processing disorder, maybe 1 in 1,000 people would have known what you said, when you said that just 10 years ago. So my life took me on this journey. I started getting my pediatric training. I found out a lot of relatability to actually my story with chiropractic, with sensory and focus and all these sort of things. And, I went head first, all in from the beginning. But really, those 2 words you said there, in this clinic, I'm actually sitting in my practice doing this with you all tonight. And I just sat down, and we're all trained as practitioners to take a case history. And all you parents, you've been to way too many doctor's offices, so you filled out way too many, more paperwork forms than you've ever wanted to, right? And you tell the story. The problem is what Dr. David was alluding to, and I was very blessed to have a mentor to make sure I didn't miss this. The problem is most doctors, most people, practitioners, that's just an exercise in the process of taking that case history and reading that paperwork. It wasn't for me, still isn't today. I really listened intently to the stories of these kids, whatever initials were on the, chief complaint line, ADHD or ASD or SPD or ODD or OCD or anxiety. I just listened to the case history again and again and again. And what the moms were telling me had happened in the pregnancy, the delivery, the early childhood. And I just kept hearing or seeing, if you're looking at the paperwork, the same stuff. And we're going to talk about that stuff. But I just saw the same patterns over and over and over again. And then my brain went, there's more to this story than I was taught or have known. So then I just poured into the science and the research, in those beginning years, and never looked back, put this all together as, the perfect storm. And been traveling and teaching and sharing it, blessed to do so for 8 years now.
Awesome. So before we move on and I ask you to get into your favorite subject, I'm sitting here and maybe I shouldn't be. I'm watching the chat box and, I don't want to get too emotional because you guys don't know me yet. But my three daughters, I have three daughters, and they always say, well, we've got mom and three girls and I'm the one that cries. But I'm reading people, just seeing daughter and one son, all ADHD, all OCD, tics, Tourette's, six daughters. I think it was Steph. I went up the page, but six daughters, Dr. Tony, and one child with severe ADHD. And the first thing that Tony said, and hopefully maybe many of you know this, maybe you didn't. You said we said chiropractor, and it's interesting, Dr. Tony, isn't it? Because when you hear chiropractor, you think, well, what? I thought this was about sensory. I thought this was about ADHD. I didn't know it was about backaches and headaches and cracking kids' backs and all that stuff. I can guarantee you it's not. Chiropractic is very misperceived, and there's many different styles. Just like a pediatrician and an orthopedic surgeon are they have two different things that they're specialized in. So Dr. Tony is, in my opinion, and I've got a pretty good opinion on this because I've been around the profession in the leadership role for so many years. And as founder and president of the NWF, I believe Dr. Tony has what I would consider the Mayo Clinic of pediatric chiropractic. He's been at this, and we're not talking about a couple of cases. We're talking about thousands of children somewhere on the spectrum. And what is really cool, Dr. Tony, is because we connected a while back and saw this, just what I'm seeing out of my corner of my eye right now. Some with ADHD, and another asked if I thought he had Asperger's, some with DMD, ADHD, and anxiety disorder, 7-year-old with high functioning ASD. We knew this was happening, but we saw it escalating and ramping up so fast. We were like, congratulations, you have such a busy office, Dr. Tony, but this isn't going to cut it. We have to get a group of chiropractors together with specific training to understand the needs. They got to understand the science that you weren't taught it, Dr. Tony.
No.
I wasn't taught it in school, and bring them together. So that's what we've done. And we've done that because we see this need. And I am so thrilled that you, as an individual, caring father and community servant in this realm of chiropractic, has agreed to come on this webinar with us tonight. I know you got a busy family life at home right now on the farm, because you are at heart, you're an Iowa farm boy living on a farm in Illinois now. But this is so needed and it's so necessary. And I'm going to pull off the leashes now, the reins, and I'd love for you. I know I need to beg you to do this. I really respect Dr. Tony. I know him well. I refer to him as the nerdy science guy. That's actually cool. And I mean that with the utmost respect, because what Dr. Tony I'm hoping you can do, and I've seen you do it before, is take the science, because there's not a parent on here that's down here. I'm talking about it. By the way, I'm Dr. David Jackson. Someone just said, can you introduce yourself again? And it's Dr. Tony Ebel. We're both here to help you understand, gain more clarity. And Tony, you've been able to, there's not a person on here that hasn't researched and doesn't know so much about science. And some of them are saying, this is what happened, this is why it happened. But I do know for a fact that you have this gift of taking the big words and telling them what they are, but then making them understandable. And that's not because this audience is smarter than most doctors. You mothers and fathers know more about this than most people. But Tony, you've got a gift for that. So I would love if you spend some time. I know you prepared some slides so you can show those, but I'd really like you to stay connected with these people and just begin to share what the perfect storm is and the science behind it.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So, and that is, I was just kind of catching some of the chat box too. And guys, that's what we're going to do. We're going to make sense I guess real quick, I'll see it in like 2 or 3 parts. We're going to make sense of the letters, okay? All of the letters and the diagnoses and the labels that your kiddos get. We're going to put them all together into where a lot of this and all of this roots from, which is the nervous system, and get to that. We're also going to connect the dots between, yes, as Dr. David was kind of beginning to say there, why in the heck are 2 pediatric, chiropractic? 1, why is there such thing as a pediatric chiropractor, right? And 2, why is chiropractic having this conversation? Trust me, we will have that, done and answer all your questions and go through them by the time we are done with this webinar tonight. So, but this is important. This may seem like a small thing. And I will tell you, I did not know how big of a thing it was, along with other things, until like nothing counts more than experience, right? Education is crucial. Education initials are nice. Experience is everything. And so that's where we're at with this. And this is a small thing, I thought in the beginning, and it's huge because I take care of these kids through all the different seasons of life. And back to school season is stress. So I had to have some fun with, this little meme here. Back to school season is like first day, celebration, backpack, little whiteboard. This is what you're going to be when you grow up. And by the 3rd day, parents are pulling their hair out and, kids are losing it and getting phone calls. You're getting emails. You're getting IEP meetings. You're getting 504 meetings. And again, we're talking to a specific audience that we know well here, of the Perfect Storm audience, with all these initials and diagnoses. So it is not a fun, relaxing, engaging season for so many. And so that's why this edition here in September, that's why the NWF asked me on, because this is a time I've seen, I'll just call it how it is. Our phone here at the office rings 3 times as much in September as it does in July, when everybody's kind of out more relaxed and having fun, because this is when stress hits these kids and really, really amps up. So to really, what is this about? It is about the science. It is going to be chock full meat and potatoes of science here in the forthcoming slides. But the science, I want the science to tell the story of the kids, your kids, okay? And the kids that are out there suffering, struggling, stressed, and not getting the answers, not getting the help, not getting, to where they deserve to be, want to be, could be. And again, just real quick to put that scale or spectrum, where it needs to be, we're going to talk about every kid. Today we got an hour or less, so we have to generalize and summarize and centralize everything. Wherever your child is, whatever their diagnoses are, whatever their stress is, whatever their severity is, their scale is, this is simply about starting there and getting them better. Okay. I've got cases, we've got, just one after one after one after another of cases who have huge gains and everything in between. And so we're going to talk about getting them there. So this kiddo's story is a very recent one. This is a letter. I'm going to read you the letter. You're looking at pictures of this little stud named Brody, who we got to meet at the beginning of this year. So I first met Brody in January of this year. And you'll see some pictures. These are pre-Brody pictures, I guess, before we get all the way done with this. And the mom sent us this letter last week. So I actually have to shrink this, I see, so I can read. But she sends us this letter. To my team of doctors at PwC, I am blessed to have 3 other amazing pediatric chiropractors and constant expanding team that takes care of all of our kids here. If a picture is worth 1,000 words, then this picture is worth 1,000,000. When I met you all a few months ago, I was riding the roller coaster that parents with ADHD, sensory mood disorder, diagnosed children ride on. All the parents, we see you all in the comments, we get it. That's you're riding this roller coaster and looking to get off. That's why you got on this webinar. I was exhausted, disappointed, skeptical, and had lost respect for medical doctors and shunned by pediatricians for using essential oils instead of prescription meds, and told, good luck with school if you don't, and when he is older, he will self-medicate with drugs and alcohol if I don't start care now. But most importantly, I was sad for my son, Brody. Of course, as a practitioner, those sort of stories, that element of the story of getting certain reports and prognoses and descriptions from other providers, because again, trust me, it happens from all walks of life. It's not the direction it should be. It's not the positive, here's everything we can do to help your son tone. It's the fear care, scare care tone that I know too many of you parents are sick of, just like this one was. So he'd been pulled out of school for various neuro exams and made to feel like he had learning disabilities. He was sent to a different school that made him feel confused because it wasn't the elementary school his brother and sister attended when they were his age, and he rode a special needs bus to get there. He'd been told that he had brain dysregulation by a psychologist and therefore hooked up to wires all over his head 2 times per week to retrain his brain waves, and made to feel like there was something wrong with his brain. He'd been given a stand-up desk in class that made him feel like he's weird and different than the other kids. I could go on, but I won't. Have I mentioned it has been quite the roller coaster? Then we met you. You need to know what a huge impact you have made on not only Brody's life, but our entire family's life. And again, guys, for your child, for your Brody, for your story, that's what we're here to make that impact on your kiddo's life. A picture's worth a million words, as she said. These pictures of Brody before everything we're going to talk about tonight was brought about for him. You can see, especially in this middle picture, how much Brody is disconnected. Most of the pictures before all this, he wasn't looking at the camera. He wasn't engaged. He wasn't socializing. All of the struggles that so many families are so used to. So that's the table setter for the science. I got one more quick table setter on this, and it's what's called an awareness test. So I'll fly through this. It'll give you the instructions on the video, but they do it quick. You're going to see two teams, a team in black and a team in white. And they're going to pass the basketball. It's going to be busy. Stuff's going to be going on. And your job to measure your awareness ability, if you will, and perceptive ability is to count the team in white, how many times they pass the basketball.
This is an awareness test. How many passes does the team in white make?
Go!
The answer is 13. But did you see the moonwalking bear?
Go!
The moonwalking bear. So what in the heck is that all about? Why do I share that with you at the start of this science section? Because of that statement right there. It is easy to miss something you're not looking for. Moms and dads, professionals, providers, everybody else on here, I would need the rest of your weekend to teach you all of the science behind the perfect storm and all of the ingredients and everything that goes into the recipe to getting these kids stuck in this stressed, sick, struggling mode. But what we're going to do is we're going to respect your time. We're going to talk to you about the one thing that very few people know about. And the one thing that I will tell you in 10 years of taking case histories, 5 years of training hundreds of other chiropractors, so tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of case histories, shows up nearly every single time. Now, is it every single kid that has a diagnosis or has an initial later on in life? No, it's not. But it is absolutely, again, I told you, if you love science, you got to love math. You got to love statistics, right? So that's what this is all based on. And time after time, when I would listen to you moms and having fun with this, why do I say moms all the time? Why do we say moms all the time, Dr. David, right? You get a dad that fills out the paperwork. It's like first name, birthday is in the spring, I think, right? Like that's just us, right? We're other places, just having fun with it, dad to dads. So we get that detailed paperwork, and I'm telling you this one thing that no other practitioner, guys, we are blessed to work with so many pediatricians who take approach of getting these kids better in a drug-free way if they can. So many homeopaths, naturopaths, occupational therapists, speech and language therapists, ABA therapists, so many other professionals who see these kids a lot of times, most of the time before we do. And because their science, their training is not on this path, they miss this thing too until they get this information and look at it. But it's that one thing we're going to talk about and really tie the science into. And I promise you, it'll give you an answer for so many that you've been missing. So no matter what the initials we're talking about with these kiddos, no matter what the diagnosis they've been given, this is the true story and the true statement. It is rooted in the nervous system. Okay. These are neurodevelopmental, neurosensory challenges. So I'm going to really give you this definition of how the nervous system works by this guy by the name of Dr. Bruce Lipton, one of the best cellular biologists, researchers, PhDs in the world. And it says the function of the nervous system is to perceive the environment and coordinate the behavior of all other cells. Now I want to kind of just talk to you to first kind of, even dad to other parents more so than just doctor, and then we'll come back to the neurology and the science. But what I know from going through this with tens of thousands of parents over the years, you're going to read that definition, and I know I took it off the screen, but you'll read it right to left. The word that stands out to you, the word that you were signed up for this to change, is behavior. And that may be impulsivity and aggression and rage for your little boy. And that might be anxiety and sensory overwhelm for your little girl when it's time to brush her hair and put on her school uniform and get on the bus. And it may be, sleep disorders, and it may be sibling defiance disorder, right? Whatever the abnormal behavior is what you're looking to change. And I get it. That's what we're here for too, to meet you there and say, we get that those challenges are wrecking your kid's life. They're wrecking the sibling's life. They're wrecking the family's life. Teachers, I'm sure we have hundreds of teachers on this thing. They're disrupting the classroom, right? And really, honestly, we could keep going. It's getting into our communities and really just stressing this thing out. But here's the words that lead to the behavior: perception and coordination. So here's where we're going to hit straight down nerd road, as Dr. Jackson likes to say with me. These issues are not, they look like in the classroom and in your house and in your home, and they look like output issues. They look like behavioral issues. They look like emotional issues. They look like, mental and learning challenges. And they are, but they come from a root of having an inability to properly perceive the child's environment. So that's why they get worse during school, when school starts up, because the environment gets louder, the environment gets busier, the environment gets crazier. So their ability to perceive and coordinate all of this noise and stress that's in our world, that's the perfect storm. It comes at them earlier and often than ever before, gets skewed, gets distorted, and gets off. Ladies and gentlemen, what this is really meant to show you is neurologically, these challenges are input and organization challenges that then lead to the output that you don't want, the effect or the behavior, the emotions you don't want. If there's a if there's a diagnosis whose literal words describe what's going on with all of these kiddos, even with the other diagnoses, it's really sensory processing disorder. If you've got an ADHD kiddo, an ASD kiddo, or other sorts of the alphabetic soup, we're going to really talk about sensory issues tonight and this perception and processing issue that is at the root of it. So quick little image. Again, I know we have you virtually, so it's not like I can, give you a handout on this. So we'll look at it on the screen here really quick. This is an image we created years ago to really help kind of tell the graphic story of this. But here's the perfect storm in a very, very quick nutshell. There is 3 different categories or types of stress that we all go through, kids included, okay? You'll see them in the middle 3 little tachometers on this image. There is physical stress, chemical stress, and emotional stress. In chiropractic, it's been talked about for 120 years as the 3 T's. So trauma, toxins, and thoughts are the T words that accompany those. And you may think about it as an adult. You may even be under care as an adult, chiropractic care as an adult. Because you're like, oh, physical stress. I played sports or injured myself or sit at a desk all day. Toxic stress, maybe a few too many margaritas at Mexican food dinner last night, right? And emotional stress, yeah, come on, who doesn't, right? But what we got to do is we have to take these 3 T's, which come together early in a child's life and often in a child's life are the perfect storm. Because here, really quick, are the 3, 4, 5 steps we see that make up the perfect storm for a child. A stressful, fear-based, toxic pregnancy, okay? A pregnancy where you had a lot of fear, a lot of stressing, a lot of anxiety, a lot of intervention, a lot of high risk, a lot of fertility challenges going into it, a lot of ultrasounds, a lot of maybe abnormal findings on the ultrasound that puts you into fear, anxiety, and stress mode. And I could go on and on and on for an hour just in that space. Then that stressed out fear, fight or flight, which we'll get to that with this image-based pregnancy, leads to that sort of labor and delivery. So the second step for most kids in the perfect storm journey is a high stress, high intervention, forceps, vacuum, cord wrapped, emergency C-section, heart decel, physically and emotionally traumatic labor and delivery. Those 2 sets in the sequence almost always end up then with a child in the 3rd step of the perfect storm, which is colicky, fussy, constipated, refluxy. They get a little bit older, teething starts to kick in, and away we go with ear infections and the carousel of ear infections, sinus infections, croup, RSV, antibiotic, tube surgery, tonsils, adenoids removed. And what happens is that stressed out pregnancy becomes the intervention and injury delivery, stressed out baby, sick toddler, sensory ADHD, diagnosed 3, 4, 5-year-old. Again, in respect to time, that is a fast and furious recant of the perfect storm sequence and steps. But that's what I heard in the case history 10 years ago. It's still what we hear over and over and over again. So if you have some or all of those elements, put in the chat box. Do you have to have all 5 steps? No, some start later and go later. It's a scale, hence the RPM text. The more of it your child had, the earlier they had it, the more they go into this red line. And as you follow this thing around, what happens is the story behind all of these perfect, I'm just going to, from here on out, put them under the perfect storm umbrella. The story behind all these conditions is they are stuck in sympathetic fight or flight stress mode. The earlier and the more severe your child's nervous system, central and autonomic nervous system, is stuck on the sympathetic fight or flight stress mode, the more symptoms, conditions, and the greater severity of it they're going to have. Because these two systems within the brain and the body and the nervous system are inversely proportional to each other. We need this fight or flight system. It's supposed to be turned on and then turned right back off. Kids especially, and we'll hit this in just a sec with kind of the last piece of the science, kids especially are supposed to live the very beginning of their life, the first 1, 3, 5, 7 developmental years, firmly more dominant on the parasympathetic growth, development, connection, healing, digestion, immune function side of the nervous system. All right, so I better keep moving there. I get a little excited with those first couple of chunks on this, and we got a few more chunks of science to get to. So there's a word in there that was hard to see on that screen, but it is a chiropractic, absolutely crucial word. It is where our science and our understanding and then our application to help these kids, it's where we absolutely are distinguished and different from others. Again, not making others ineffective and not needed for kid after kid after kid after kid, but this is where we make the difference in these child's lives because we are the only trained professionals that know about this, or most importantly, assess, analyze, and can do something about this thing called subluxation. So subluxation, when you hear it for the rest of the webinar here tonight, just means stress stuck on. Subluxation, and the spine is going to tie this together. That's why chiropractors are having this conversation. I'll get there next. Subluxation is stress stuck on. So what does that have to do with us as chiropractors? Where could this possibly be coming from? Chiropractors work with the spine. You work with the structural. You work with the skeletal system, right? Different S words. So what is the spine? What does the skeletal structural system have anything to do with the central nervous system? Well, the first D, I'm going to introduce you to 4 nerdy D words, but as Dr. David said, I will give them to you in farmer language by the time we are done, okay? So the first D is what we call dyskinesia, all right? So dyskinesia is where certain pieces and parts of the body, but especially we're going to talk about the spine, become misaligned and fixated, okay? It's abnormal movement and alignment. Especially all you professionals, you pediatric professionals here, and then parents who have taken your kids to these amazing folks, you're going to know and have been told that motor development, so the movement of your child, whether they held their head upright, whether they sat up, whether they rolled over, whether they army crawled, cross crawled, and walked, all of these motor milestones have everything to do with their developmental neurological milestones. The whole world, from pediatricians to OTs to chiropractors to parents, knows about that because movement determines brain function and especially development and connection. So when movement and motor is altered and distorted, dyskinesia, so is brain and neurological development and function. And that right there, I had to hit that point strong. That's why I wanted to take the PowerPoint off. That right there is where chiropractic enters the picture. So sorry for a very, are we halfway through or past? Am I late?
Halfway in.
Okay. All right. So that right there, halfway through, I throw you a wake up image there on your screen. This right here is a snapshot picture. We chose not to do the video of this conversation tonight, but this right here is a snapshot picture of a child being born via C-section. Okay. So sorry I know a lot of people don't handle these sort of images very well, but I also know that way too many kiddos are not handling their sensory environment and the world they live in very well. And that's the conversation we have to have tonight is to make that change. And this piece right here is the moonwalking bear. So what has happened and what you've read about and learned about and gone to seminars and webinars and podcasts about, I'm sure before you got here tonight, ladies and gentlemen, is about how in the last 10, 15, 20, 30 years that the rise of toxicity, the rise of, chemicals in our environments, whether we breathe them in or take them in or whatever, all of this has escalated and gone up. And you've all seen the post and the shares and the images of at the same time. So as autism and ADHD and all this chronic illness in our kiddos. And there's a lot of people talking about that, and they should. We need to. We live in a more toxic, stressed environment than we ever have and should be. So that's a big piece of it. But the missing link that you haven't been taught to look for, and the moonwalking bear, is that the vast majority of kiddos that end up with these diagnoses have some form of what we would term birth intervention and thus injury to the upper neck, to the brainstem, and the delicate structures that control all of this communication between the brain and the body. So this is a picture of little Charlie. He's a patient of mine. His older brother was born via emergency C-section and had a whole host of perfect storm challenges, came into the clinic, got better. Mom and dad went to the perfect storm workshop live, everything you're going to learn and be had done tonight. And dad is the sort of dude who doesn't, always, he's just a strong dude. So he doesn't follow everybody's directions. So when they said, stay above the curtain and don't take pictures, they went for a VBAC on the second baby, this little stud, and it didn't go that route. So again, another C-section. And the dad took a picture, snapped it, sent it to me, and said, hey, come put his head back on straight. So I'm a little bit cart before the horse, but you got to understand that simple farmer element of children being born via big hands. Big, in a farmer world, it'd be called a pliers, big forceps, right? Or a big plunger, okay, and a vacuum extraction. Them being pulled, twisted, and then yanked into the world. And I know the words I'm using. I know you're like, wait a minute, this is a little baby. That can't be. It isn't. It is. It is. C-sections are and birth interventions have absolutely escalated drastically since the 70s, 80s, and 90s. The amount of them we use and the amount of force that is used to bring a child into the world is more than ever would be accepted 30 seconds later if your uncle who doesn't know how to handle a baby comes over and you say, hey, hold the baby. What do you do? Hold the neck, protect the neck. So that is where this dyskinesia, there's a lot of time on that one, but that dyskinesia is the starter of this whole science-based conversation. And it begins, here's a quick chart, we'll go right through it. This early 90s, and it was even way less, it was 10, 15% in the 70s and 80s. Now some hospitals are upwards of 50% C-section rates. And this is besides the injury to the neck, which puts them firmly in need of a pediatric chiropractic conversation, and we'll finish that for you tonight. There's so many other things that they miss out on with a C-section and other sort of intervention deliveries too, but this is the moonwalking bear. Real quick review of the science, and we can post it on the NWF page and share it and get it out there. It's a recent study by an osteopathic journal that found 99 out of 100 infants. And by the way, here's an important word in the title of this thing, healthy newborns. They weren't examining stressed kids, diagnosed kids, colic kids, healthy newborns. They found 99 out of 100 had some form of what they term somatic dysfunction, which is dyskinesia, okay? So abnormal structural movement and alignment of the neck. So now we're going to kind of, if you had your child in OT or PT, the last bit of this science will be, even though it's nerdy words and it's everything else, I know this crowd, I know you parents, this will be relatable. You've heard these words in some form or fashion before. But when a child has dyskinesia and that is stuck and it is subluxated in our world, it sticks the nervous system into this sympathetic fight or flight mode, and it sets up this next D, which is called disafferentation. What is that big, huge, long word that I remember when I was in school? Why didn't they make it something else that would be easier for me to remember, right? And spell? But disafferentation means abnormal input, okay? Afferent is sensory processing. This is the neurological word for how our sensory system works. And that Lipton definition before, perceive the environment, what we have is actually 7 senses that help us perceive our external environment, all the noise, all the lights, all the other kids in the classroom, and then our internal environment, which is our gut and our immune system and everything else. So disafferentation means the good stuff, movement, motor, when it's shut down and subluxated, and a kid doesn't go through the normal optimum motor developmental patterns, then instead this thing called nociception or noise gets into the system. And what we know about kids with ADHD, sensory anxiety, and ASD is literally even at rest, their brains are basically listening to high volume Metallica all day, every day. At rest, they are being bombarded with noise into their sensory system, into their brain. That's why they output impulsivity and movement, because movement is calming. So why are we having this? I got to hit this one more time. Why are we as chiropractors, or I as a chiropractor, teaching you this? Because that proprioception, which is the nerd term for that movement into the nervous system, that sensory motor input into the nervous system, 60% of it comes just from the spine, and 1/3 of it comes from just the top two joints, bones, nerves, and muscles of the upper neck. So again, ladies and gentlemen, I know I'm in the thick of it here, but when you take a kiddo and we pull them into the world and we subluxate, distort, disconnect, in that neurological mechanism, their upper cervical spine, we distort 1/3 of all of their sensory input. So that right there, moms and dads, is why when you look back at your kiddos, history or their pictures, they have torticollis, plagiocephaly. They didn't nurse very well on one side. They didn't like going in the car seat. They hated laying on their back and going to sleep, so they stayed awake and they screamed all night. That's why their ears couldn't drain, so they got antibiotic after antibiotic, because they got ear infection after ear infection, because these muscles were distorted, damaged, injured, and tight, and the lymphatics couldn't drain. That's why still today, as we go, you know what else comes with back to school season? Maybe not so much out in fancy California, brother man, but in the Midwest, seasonal allergies. So when you don't feel good and you're sick all the time, your mood isn't so good. So your mood disorder, your learning disorder, and your sensory disorder goes through the roof as well. So it all begins there. All right, Dr.
Tony, I know you've got a couple more D's to go through, but before you do, I just want to acknowledge some of the things I'm watching as I'm listening to you and watching the chat thread. You said, and I don't want people to miss this, that there are these three underlying causes, categories, if you will, of stress that we're all under: toxins, trauma, and autosuggestions, right? The things that happen to us, the things that are put upon us, toxins, and of course, emotional stress, good or bad, it's still stressful. And one of the things that really you're focusing on right now, because it is just so commonplace statistically, is that birth process. And there's a lot of people that go, oh, birth was beautiful. I mean, we had 3 home births, and yes. And I'll be honest with you, my children, thank God, my middle child actually had a little bit of sensory and struggled with it. But all 3 of them have been beautiful, healthy children, grown up outside of a traditional system. They've had their nervous system and these subluxations removed since birth, and they've never taken medications, and they're just healthy 25, 24, and 21-year-olds. They were born at home. I was there. It was a beautiful process. And because Dad's a chiropractor, when I checked them, every one of them had what Tony's talking about. The process, even when it's beautiful, is still extremely, I'm not even going to pretend to get myself in trouble and talk about how hard it is for a mom. I'm just backing away from that one, because my superhero, amazing, epic wife of 27 years proved to me that they are absolutely superhero. And thank God, God was smart enough to give that job to a woman, not us, because species would have ended. But it's stressful on the child too. So it's not just that trauma, but my gosh, it's so obvious. You wouldn't give your little baby to someone and have them pick them up by the head, and the torsion that has caused their birth. I got to tell you, after many years of practice, I could tell when I checked a baby's neck, I could tell where the obstetrician was right-handed or left-handed based upon the dominance of the position they wanted to twist that child's head in, just to help the process. This is also not critical of the birth process. We're not here to try to fix that. That's another issue, perhaps, just like some of the things, vaccines and toxins and all these other things people are asking questions about. But what I really wanted to say, because I'm sitting there literally trying as hard as I can not to lose it. So I had to talk so I could regain my composure. But we've got about 15 more minutes. there's a solution. We wouldn't bring you on to talk more about the problem if we didn't have a solution. It's not a guarantee. It's not a cure. It's not a fix. What Dr. Tony is trying to tell you, or is telling you, is that inside all this science and the rest of the D's is this magical ability of the body to heal. And your child is not limited in its ability to heal, except by the distortion, the dyskinesis, the dysponesis, the disafferentation that Dr. Tony is discussing with you now. So we're going to get to some options for you in just a moment. So please stay on till the end. But it's crucial that your depth of understanding even goes further than it ever has before. So you have what so many people have had. It's like this is so obvious now. How come and I see so many of you talking about that as you log in. So Dr. Tony, I know you've got some more to rock and roll through. So let's bring them from appropriate.
It's always true. And we respect and understand each and every one of you. You know, so many have read so much. There's questions on there. I see the gut immune and all that. It is all in this. It is all tied together by this. And I'd love to give you all the answers to this. But again, Dr. David, you nailed it. The single most important thing I could do for your child. And you just got to know how much I respect and appreciate and grateful for having your time and attention tonight. Because I know the opportunity and the impact that can come from it is to get you the action steps as to help your child. The answer is set up the action steps. That's what we're really digging into on this. So here's the story. Subluxation is a sensory processing issue at the root of all of this. You want to know why there's gut issues in so many kids? Because the nervous system isn't doing a very good job of controlling the gut motility. So things get stuck and they get sick and they get inflamed. You want to know why so many ADHD, sensory and learning disability kids have chronic allergies and asthma? Because the nervous system controls and coordinates the immune system, and it shuts that down and suppresses and modulates that as well when it's stuck in stress mode. So it is all tied together through the central nervous system, and getting it to better perceive and function is the key. So let's fly past this one, but this statement will tie together at the very end. You can't be in growth and protection at the same time. We even see a ton of these ADHD sensory kiddos. They're literally physically not growing. They're not meeting their milestones because their nervous system has their entire biological system locked into protection instead of growth. So here's the last one. Here's what will relate it. Here's where you'll tie it all together with your kiddos to see where it's off, but most importantly, to figure out how to get it back online where you want it. Dyskinesis is the last nerd term I want to bring about tonight. And what it means is abnormal energy output, but what it comes from is abnormal energy input. So I'll tie this last section and then I'll give it back to you, Dr. David. This is what all of those D's and all that story means. And yes, I get the questions. We see them all the time. It's about 10% or less of our cases where, the pregnancy, the delivery, mom's rocked it, incense burning, Bob Marley playing, hot tub, the tub. I always like to joke, right? I've checked babies there who have subluxation. I've checked them in other accords. But it reminds me of Leah, who, gosh, I will tell you this. I was telling you about him at the beginning, I think, Dr. David. Little Leo started with us in May as a nonverbal head banging. They didn't think he even had hearing capabilities, failing all his hearing tests, chronic ears, supposed to put tubes in, the perfect storm. We met him in May, nonverbal, sick, all of that stress, banging his head, screaming, yelling all the time. And yesterday I had my daughter in here to adjust her, and he had a conversation with my daughter. That's in 90 plus days. Leo did not have a stressed out pregnancy, did not have an intervention-based delivery, had a rock star, but he got sick as a baby. And the moment he got sick once, because of the path that got followed, he got sick again, and he got sick again, and he got sick again. And the gut and the immune system also crosstalk to the nervous system. So the more that those systems, sorry, I'm out of time and this word popped in, the more those systems are assaulted as well, and the more our kids get sick and have these inflammations and reactions and infections, the more they go down this sympathetic storm. That's the middle T, the toxins. So they don't have to have the birth trauma. They don't have to have the stressful pregnancy. They don't have to have all of the recipe or all of the equation and all of the ingredients, but some of them will send them into this sensory sympathetic storm, and the nervous system learns good stuff and bad stuff, especially these formative years. Your baby's brain is plastic, meaning it's more easily moldable and impressionable. And this dyskinesis comes from abnormal energy input, and that's abnormal energy output. And in today's world, we call that ASD, ADHD, ODD, OCD, SPD, and everything in between.
Thank you, Dr. Tony. I know I've got another question for you, and I know you have an answer because I've seen the story in the slides, and I want you to get back to little Brody too and wrap this up. But one of the things I want to do is just give you a perspective as I'm listening to Dr. Tony. He's been so clear about everything, but here's what I hear. I mentioned earlier, I'm a proud daddy of 3 daughters. They're all grown. And I don't know, other than when the street lights came on, I better be home or else my life is pretty much over as I know it. I cannot fathom how we stayed connected back then, but somehow most of us survived, right? I survived. But today, without a cell phone, I can't connect with my girls. And God forbid, it's not just a I love you call and how was your day call, but something really critical and urgent. But there's always that time. In fact, there was just one the other day. My middle daughter just got married, and she met a gentleman from New Zealand, and they had their immigration hearing. You can imagine this time in history, it's not the easiest thing in the world. And they're married. And she was so stressed out, and I get a call from her, and I can't hear her. I'm hearing like every third word. My 5 bars, that perfect connection that Dr. Tony is talking about, is reduced a little bit. Call it a subluxation, an interference to the transmission that at that time was vital. It wasn't life or death, but man, it was important. But it could be life or death. In the body, as you're explaining this, when a child or an adult or a grown child has this subluxation, this distortion in the nervous system that could cause from any number of things, birth trauma to stress, and it sets in and it disturbs the ability of the brain to communicate with the body, and a child can no longer perceive their environment. You wanted to go so much more nerdy, and I respect that you didn't. But just the term proprioception, how our joints let us know where we are, that is an unbelievable process that we optimal functioning human beings can determine where we are in space from input. If you've got an input problem because that information's coming in, but then it gets disconnected because the signal's not there, God, these poor kids. I mean, and this as a mother, you see it in their eye, and it's in there, that something's in the way. So what I see, and I say this with so much respect, I see all these people trying to chase all the effects. So what about the gut issue? And what do you recommend for this? And there's some great things out there, proven strategies. But what we're saying is that, and Tony, what I want you to show them is that all of that is great. But the one thing that controls every other system in the body is your child's nervous system. They've had their gut checked, their blood checked, their height checked, their weight checked, their eyes checked, their ears checked, their nose checked, everything's been checked except their nervous system. They may have done some nervous tests, but not for this interference, this disturbance that allows the gut to function normally. Because if you could allow the gut to function normally, the body heals. Heal are the first 4 letters in the word health. So Tony, how do chiropractors, yourself and the thousands of chiropractors that we've trained, and part of the solution, I've seen it posted on here, we have a database of providers at the nwf.org, the nwf.org, that are specifically trained. And the mass majority, I mean, almost 100% of them, use a technology that is so cool and so simple, and it's so cost effective. It doesn't put anything in the body, it doesn't take anything out. But man, when you see it, Dr. Tony, I knew you, because you'll send me a text and go, redact the name for HIPAA compliance. Go, look at this kid. This kid's like boom, 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 and we're going to save this kid. Can you go into and wrap up with that? We're a little bit behind. I apologize, but this is so important to get into.
We are a little bit. You should come to one of my local workshops. They shut the lights out on us. So all right, no, because it is. When people have the chemical imbalances, come from neurological imbalances, right? Gut imbalances from neurological imbalances. So there's so much to this. Yeah, you know what? I was putting this. You'd asked us to do this tonight and get with us, and I have so many cases over all these years, and all the other doctors that we train have them, and we're always sharing and working on them together. And then literally that mom, as this is how my world works. God always lines these things up together for you at the right time to help others with it. Sally sends us that letter last week about Brody. And so just top of mind. So I thought, all right, you've seen the pictures of Brody, you've seen the words. This is a picture of Brody, and I'm going to use that word picture. I'm going to simplify it. This is a picture of Brody and what was going on with him. And it's the picture you have to, I know that's a straight at it word, but it's the picture you have to get done for your child if they're struggling. This is the action step right here you have to take for your kiddo, is to get these sets of scans. We do multiple components of our scans, and our stress tests and our nervous system don't have any real time left to explain all the nuances. But here's all you need to know about this surface EMG, which is a stress test for the neuromotor neurosensory input system. So we're measuring that noise, that nociception, that sympathetic stress with these scans. White would be good. A total energy number of 100 would be good and healthy and balanced, because you got to have some noise, right? You got to have battery plugged in and turned on. But these kids have too much. They're not idling in the white and where they want to be, not in the green, not in the blue. They're in the red. They are completely fired up. We lovingly call these sort of kiddos raging bull kiddos. And then the kids who, struggle with connection and concentration and focus and emotional regulation, we call them drunken bull kiddos. And usually autism kiddos have both, right? And they tie it all together. So Brody was a flat out raging bull, couldn't calm down, couldn't connect, and then couldn't concentrate kiddo. This is his first scan. Red is noise. Red is Metallica. So not only did his entire system, you see the birth injury he had. I'll give you a snippet of his paperwork next so you can see about his birth injury like we were talking about. So his neck up here, C1, C3, have stress and tension and noise to them. And this kiddo, by the time we met him, because the adrenals, another thing I saw some comments on, the adrenals work for the sympathetic nervous system. They respond to a sympathetic fight or flight response. So of course in these kids, these adrenals, adrenaline, norepinephrine, and their chemicals are going to be imbalanced. The chemicals are the messengers for the nervous system. It's time our healthcare system stops trying to kill the messenger and actually starts with the source and gets to the nervous system. So that's where Brody was. This is 2 snippets of his paperwork that tie the whole perfect storm story together. This is what I've been hearing here for 10 years and where this all came from. But I love his mom. She got it. That's why she was feeling shunned by the medical doctors, right? Because she was asking, can you tell me why my son is struggling? Can you tell me where the function of his nervous system is off? And you can tell me what to do to make him function the best he can. That first word that she used, therein lies the difference. In order for your child to feel better, because you heard her words about feeling, right? At the beginning of her story, how different he felt and how much that messed with his life and the family's life. In order to get Brody to feel better, we had to make sure we could get him to function better. And that's the beautiful thing about chiropractic. We don't treat their abnormal feelings or their abnormal behavior. We don't cure any of that. We restore function to the central nervous system. We calm the sympathetic storm by turning the brake pedal back on so that we can fix what can be fixed and relieve the struggle. This is also why I want to talk about Brody. It was at school especially and also at home. And again, this was a kiddo who basically at the very end, they said, get this baby out. So they didn't use forceps. But I will tell you, we've all held our beautiful little babies in our hands. And our hands are much bigger than their heads, their brains, and their necks. So when we do that, that's what happens. So I'll read his story. And I know I took up, I went sciencey, bro. I'm sorry. And went deep into it. So, and we'll share more of it throughout the National Wellness Foundation over time. Let me read. I just am blessed to be a part of it. So I can't wait to read it. And then I'll be done and turn it over to you, Dr. David. So here's the last part of Sally's letter sent to us last week. And I'll pick it up where I left it before. Then we met you. Brody is calm now. Brody has self-control now. Brody doesn't get overstimulated in crowds now. Brody smiles and rides his bike and interacts with friends now. He can ride his bike because his motor system works better. Brody doesn't overreact now. Brody listens to instructions now, skips to school now, talks about friends at school now. Brody is doing his homework without tearing his shirt off and carving the kitchen table with his pencil in pure agony because homework used to suck so much because the emotions he had around it, because he struggled with it. Brody sleeps like an angel. Brody talks to us at the dinner table. Brody isn't angered easily now. Brody eats better now. All the dietary, sensory aversions and restrictions your kiddos have, you're trying to climb Mount Everest by changing those first if your kiddo's sympathetic nervous system is stuck on. Calm that first, then change the diet. Brody shows love and affection to us, especially his mama. Brody is enjoying life and feels good. This past weekend was Brody's sister's birthday. For years, we've always hired a babysitter to watch Brody for events such as this, as it was always too much for him to manage. He wasn't at his sister's birthday parties. Come on, that's life. Well, I knew 100% that he was fully capable of coming along this time and would enjoy every minute of the day because he is on top of the world now, just look at this picture. From the bottom of our hearts to the top of this Ferris wheel at Navy Pier, we thank you at PwC. And David, you know this. This is what you've blessed me. We've done PwC is all over the world now. There's trained pediatric and family chiropractors everywhere with that scanning, with that technology, with the science, with the protocols. And there's kids everywhere that need them.
Yeah, well, thanks for now making me cry. Appreciate you. No, but it's
three daughter syndrome.
I agree. And listen, as we wrap up tonight, first of all, thank you to Dr. Tony for sharing from your heart, and for all the parents and all the caregivers that are asking really great questions. And you've covered so many of them, and we will do everything that we possibly can. In 30 years of being a chiropractor, I've learned to enter a conversation that has happened inside a parent that is witnessing something like we're witnessing right now. And one of those things that I want to make clear is that chiropractic is very different, especially pediatric chiropractic. And we don't seek to cure or even really diagnose. Our curiosity begins with the story that Dr. Tony shared that is so common. And then it is peaked with the science and the objective findings of what's really there. And what we do seek to do is optimize the potential that the potential story that is within that child's body or that adult. We take care of big people too. But it's not I don't want anyone to walk away from this webinar saying, oh, these chiropractors said they can cure ADHD and cure autism and cure anything. Our goal is much bigger than that. And our input can be as well. I saw someone say, Brody is my boy. Not literally, but that's like my son. And that's like millions of sons and daughters all over the world, which is why I'm so honored to be able to host you on this event that's going global. And yes, it will be put pinned to the front page of the National Wellness Foundation, so your friends and your family and other coworkers and providers can learn and most importantly, can take action. Because what Dr. Tony said at the end, I think, is perhaps it's all interesting and it all answers questions. And there are pieces of a puzzle that begin to fit. But if we don't find out what your child is going through, we can only guess. Someone said, I had a natural birth, adjusted by a chiropractor, all these things. What could the stresses possibly be? And the answer right now is, I don't know. Dr. Tony doesn't know. But the nervous system doesn't lie. If you plug a voltmeter into the wall, it's going to tell you how many volts are coming out of that wall. The technology that Dr. Tony shared aligned with the technologically advanced and pediatric trained chiropractors that are members of the National Wellness Foundation are here to help you do that. So one of the things that I'm really excited to make you aware of is that every single one of our pediatric trained chiropractors that have licensed, that understand, that have trained on this perfect storm information, have trained on the science. And I'm talking about additional training outside of school. I've gone through a training program that train with us regularly 3 times per month. Every single Monday we train together, that they have all agreed that to open up their offices for you to bring your child, your family in and at least find out. There's no promises because we don't know. None of us know yet. But I got to think that, in fact, I don't think it. I know that you're sitting here right now thinking, could this be it? Could all of this struggle and all these challenges be from something as seemingly simple as this submarine subluxation thing that Dr. Tony talked about, this interference in the nervous system that could have started a long time ago? And all I know is that none of you should leave this webinar just wondering. See, a state of wonder is a great state as long as you answer the question. And the question is, could it be? And the answer is, we won't know until you get your child scanned and checked by a pediatric chiropractor. So here's what you can expect. I'm going to ask you, as a parent myself, to go to the National Wellness Foundation site. It's NWF.org, the NWF.org. On that site, and Tony, if you've got a slide you can pull up while I'm chatting here and then pull it back down. On that site, you will see, there it is. There's the URL. We have a provider directory. You can put in your zip code, put in your city, and it will give us a list. We don't have chiropractors that are pediatrically trained in every corner of every city in the world, but we are working hard at getting that done for you. But you will most likely be able to find a highly skilled, highly trained pediatric chiropractor at that URL. And when you do, here's what I'd like you to do. There's 2, maybe 3 groups of people that are with us tonight. One, you were actually referred by a chiropractor or a friend that went to a chiropractor. And Tony, if you can take that off the screen and just put it back to you and I, so I can really emphasize this. If that's you, then you'll receive a follow-up email thanking you for joining the webinar, or maybe it'll say, hey, did you miss it? Here's a replay link to make it easier for you. Go back to that person, email them back. Their phone number will likely be on that email. Contact them, say you listened to the Perfect Storm workshop, the back to school edition with Dr. Tony and Dr. David, and you would like to get your child checked. That's all you're going to do. They will make it more reasonable, time-wise, financial investment-wise than you can imagine. This is just to check them. And they will give you an honest feedback. You're going to see if they do the scans. You're going to see their scan. You're going to know. And if they find this disturbance that Dr. Tony talked about, they'll tell you what it's going to take to correct that problem. They'll talk to you about the investment that it's going to take. And all I can tell you is everyone's a little bit different, but it is so much less than it is so cost effective. It's the most cost effective form of healthcare on the planet today, according to so many expert researchers. Let's not worry about that. What you're worried about as a parent, what I want you to be concerned about is at least finding out. So every member of the National Wellness Foundation has agreed to set up a complimentary consultation where you can at least have a conversation. Some will just do it over the phone. Some you can go in and talk to them, have a conversation with them. If they need to do an evaluation and scans look warranted, they'll talk to you about that and handle your circumstances with you. But man, I got to tell you, your son or your daughter could be little Brody. They could be little Evan. They could be one of the hundreds of thousands of people that chiropractors like Dr. Tony, myself, and so many people in the National Wellness Foundation have dedicated their lives to helping. So if you came from a chiropractor, call them up, make an appointment. If you just found out through Facebook or you saw a link or somewhere, you don't know where you came, go to the nwf.org, put in your zip code and find a chiropractor near you. If you find that you put it in and there is no return, send us an email. We can't create something instantly, but we are working as hard as we can because Dr. Tony and I and the entire NWF team understand the reach and understand the magnitude, and we have a job to do. So we are dedicated to helping you do that. The worst thing to do is get a lot of information and not take any action. And I know I'm preaching to the choir because you are action takers to the point of you're tired of it because it's another broken promise, another dead end, another challenge. But I also know the human spirit of a mom. I know the spirit of a dad, and I know you're willing to do whatever it takes. So we are here in every capacity we can possibly be to help you. And as I hope I can say this with the utmost respect, as special as Dr. Tony is, the results Dr. Tony gets, which many consider are miraculous, are not because he's so damn good looking with that cut on his forehead.
I knew that was coming back.
It's because he knows the same thing that I know and the same thing that our trained pediatric chiropractors know. So you don't have to get on a plane and fly to Dr. Tony's office. Find a chiropractor, give it everything you've got. I can't wait to hear your stories on Facebook and on the National Wellness Foundation page. Talk about how you found us, share your story there, get involved. We've got a lot of people that community is really building. We are dedicated as a nonprofit to give back to you with information, education, revolving around this perfect storm ideal. So Dr. Tony, I cannot thank you enough for dedicating your life to this, spending the last hour and 8 minutes, went over on educating you for you moms, dads, caregivers, chiropractors, people that are grandparents, people that are concerned about these kiddos, teachers. And this is your opportunity. So again, please do something. Go to the nwf.org, find a provider, look at more data, rewatch the video, call up the chiropractor that referred you here, but do something so we can do everything we possibly can to help you change them, because we are all dedicated to healthy kids and healthy family, and we are committed to helping you do that. So appreciate you. Love you. God bless you guys. Thank you, Dr. Tony. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Until we see you next time, health is yours. Go get it.